Okay, so chapter 22, this is the gastrointestinal diseases. There's a little bit more going on here with this than there was in the last couple. So, but I don't think it'll take us very long to run through it. Again, this is mostly memorization stuff. There's not a lot really to elaborate on. The longer lectures are probably better for it than this, but if you don't, it's like with the respiratory disease. If you don't know what tuberculosis is, man, I don't know if I can help you. So the GI diseases, normal gut biota. You normally have a ton of bacteria in your gut, right? We know this. That doesn't just mean your gut, but we're also going to be talking about, oral, like in your, literally in your mouth, in your throat, all of that. It's not just in the gut that you're going to have a biome associated with it. So, right. So these organisms, they provide protection from pathogens via microbial antagonism, which just means like they're taking up the stadium seats, right? The good guys are taking up the stadium seats, so the bad guys can't sit down. And they also have protective chemicals that they can make to help out with that sometimes. They also digest some of our food to allow us to have nutrients that we couldn't have gotten from the food ourselves. And they aid in our immune development and teach us what is good versus what is not, and what is self versus what is not. And they also have been linked to mental health. Gut health has been linked to mental health, as well as non-infectious diseases like obesity and, of course, diabetes. So it's a big deal, your gut. And I know you guys know that because it's becoming a huge deal nowadays. Like when these, this book, you guys are getting the last of this textbook, the next crowd in the spring gets a whole new text. We're going to re-record all these freaking videos, but that's fine, right? So this is just you and I enjoying this. Well, I don't know. I don't even know what I was going to say. Right. So when this was written, gut health and understanding gut health wasn't as much of a thing as it is now. And it's really popular, which I think is a great thing. There's so much that we can learn yet from our gut health. I did this study called something with a Z. I don't remember what, Zoe. And you send in like a bunch of stuff. You wear like a glucose monitor and all of this. And then you send in a poop sample and they check to see what kind of bacteria you have in your gut. And they like kind of separate it out, give them cute names, which I didn't really care for, but they had like the good bacteria that do all those like beneficial things, and like the bad bacteria that kind of do kind of bad things for you, whether it's like making too much gas or causing inflammation or whatever else that these guys can do that's not good, not particularly beneficial, right? You would want the other good guys. I had all bad and no good. I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. I take probiotics now. I stopped actually lately, but I used to take probiotics for a while. It didn't help at all. I don't know. So I don't know. But yeah, that means studies say it means something. I mean, I don't know. Anyways, let's move on. The most common infectious disease in humans is dental caries. So yes, we are talking about creation of biofilms on your teeth. So bacteria grow on your teeth. They especially like areas called pellicles. So anytime, anywhere that there is, especially on the top of your teeth, where there's little divots, they can build their biofilms up. I keep looking at myself. I know it looks like I'm looking down, but I'm just looking at myself like, I know you guys probably do the same thing whenever you're on video calls. Right. So they form biofilms on like those pellicle areas where, they can adhere better to those parts. And then in the biofilms, they start to ferment, especially if you're eating a lot of sugar. Yeah. If you're eating a lot of sugar, they'll start to ferment. And what is one of the byproducts of fermentation? Acid. So acid can eat through the enamel. So that's the problem there, right? So that's why we want to floss, because flossing gets rid of the biofilms between the teeth where we can't reach with our brush. And then you want to be sure you brush twice a day. Dentists say to brush, let's say they probably tell you to brush every time you have a meal, but I don't do that. I brush like every 2 or 3 days. The biofilm isn't going to build back up that quickly, but Flossing every day is probably good. It's probably what you should do. But yeah, dental caries. Isn't that kind of not exciting, but obvious at the same time? That's the most common disease in humans, infectious disease in humans, so caused by bacteria that are causing a problem for us. All right, lately, we've had quite a lot of talk in the media about norovirus. It is a common cause of foodborne diarrheal illness and is associated with diarrhea outbreaks on cruise ships. So I know you guys have heard about this, especially, well, I say especially right now, but you guys are watching this in the future. It's the future to me, it's the present to you, but this is May 26th. And right now there's been quite a lot on the news about outbreaks of norovirus on cruise ships. So yeah, rotavirus, there always is going to be, right? Rotavirus is the next virus that we will talk about in the GI diseases. It's the most common cause of infectious diarrhea, period. Like that's the most common cause. There is a vaccine available for it, but you've probably had it and just didn't even know it. People usually just wait these things out, right? What's the best treatment for diarrhea? You probably already know it. Fluid and electrolyte replacement with rest, right? Like it's just, that's the best treatment for it. And it really is. The most common cause of bacterial diarrhea is going to be Campylobacter. It is foodborne. It's not super severe or anything, but it does cause diarrhea. It's a pretty common one, Campylobacter. Shigella also causes bacterial diarrhea and dysentery. Dysentery is bloody diarrhea. That's all that is. That's all that means. It produces a toxin called Shiga toxin, and that's part of what makes it cause dysentery and lead to inflammation and and bloodiness in the actual colon, if you look at it. So there's a lot of inflammation, and it gets rid of the crypts of the colon as well because of all the inflammation. Next is Salmonella enterica, Typhimurium. I mean, there's a lot of different strains of Salmonella that cause disease. The ones, Typhimurium and typhi, obviously are associated with typhoid fever. They have a typhoid toxin associated with them. They produce that toxin. The other Salmonella versions do not produce that toxin. So they're just going to be less severe. The toxin is just going to make it more severe. That's the only way we can discriminate. Then there was Typhoid Mary, right? I think I talked about her already, but she was an Ireland lady who had Salmonella typhi, I believe, Typhimurium maybe, doesn't matter, one of the typhoid ones. And so she had typhoid and she was typhoid fever, and she was spreading it to people because she wasn't washing her hands and she was cooking and serving people food. And so they locked her up and they said, stop that. And then they released her a few years later and said, you can go as long as you behave and wash your hands and don't cook for people anymore. And so she changed her name and just went on about it, and people started getting sick and dying. And so they locked her up for the rest of her life and she died. That's Typhoid Mary. I say a lot, like whenever I think somebody's coughing around me a lot or whatever, I'll like, oh, man, you're trying to be Typhoid Mary and stuff. I don't know. It was a joke I thought everybody knew, but I'm starting to learn that maybe not everybody knows who Typhoid Mary is. This course has kind of taught me that. Whatever. So E. coli, the most important one to know about as far as infection and like disease goes, is definitely E. coli 0157H7, and that is an STEC. So STEC is Shiga toxin producing E. coli. So they produce a toxin that's pretty much exactly what Shigella dysenteriae produces. That leads to the same sort of symptoms with the inflammation and dysentery and all that. So those are STEC. That's what that stands for. There's a lot of other kinds of E. coli that cause disease as well. I'm not going to get into them here. Clostridium difficile. You guys know C. diff. It's Clostridium, right? So what does that mean? What's the special thing about Clostridium? I hope that you're answering right now. I can hear you distant in the future. Yeah, so it's going to produce endospores, which is why it's such a kind of a big deal if you do have a patient in a hospital. People getting treated with antibiotics for surgeries and everything like that. those antibiotics clear out their normal biome. And now the C. diff that they had, because it has endospores and was, able to survive those antibiotics, now it overgrows and it causes pseudomembranous, pseudomembranous gastritis and colitis. That's what it is. I don't remember the word for some. Right, so pseudomembrane, just like we had pseudomembrane, just like what we had talked about with diphtheria, except this is in the colon. So it can lead to a formation of a pseudomembrane. There's a lot of inflammation here, a lot of diarrhea happening here, a lot of discomfort for the patient, and it's very malodorous, as they say. The endospores make it hard to contain. So if you have other patients who have also been on antibiotics recently, this could get spread pretty easily to another patient if there is an outbreak of this. So it's a pretty common one. Diarrhea is best treated with fluids and electrolyte replacement. We already said that. Cholera, I can't really ask the question. It's just right there. Cholera, that's a pretty big disease. It's a big one to know. You've probably heard of cholera and you just don't know much about it. It's going to be diarrhea. It causes rice water stools, just what it sounds like. You're going to have such watery stools. Are going to look like a white, clearish, like slightly translucent, but it's like rice water. It ain't going to be brown really after a while, because you're going to be pushing out so much of your cell water and your electrolytes that it's not going to have much else. It's going to clean you out like you would if you had you're getting ready for a colonoscopy. So this is caused by the bacterium Vibrio cholerae. And yeah, it has an enterotoxin. So it's an AB toxin. So it has two different parts, and they break apart essentially to cause like their toxic effects. But it leads to electrolyte release. That's what the toxin does. So that's the problem with it. So this is where they'll have like people laying on beds with a hole in it under the butt, and you are just go into a bucket underneath until you are done with the disease. That's what are they going to do? Give you fluids and that. Sounds awful. There are outbreaks associated with poor hygiene, poor, what is it called? Cleanliness, close quarters, slums, things like that. When there was I can't think of words today. Earthquake. I keep wanting to call it a hurricane. There's an earthquake in Haiti. This is talked about in the other lecture, of course, but that people had to live in these shanty towns essentially, and that led to close proximity and improper treatment of water, and that led to spread of cholera in that case. But it was pretty well managed. There is a vaccine available. It only lasts for 2 years. All right, hepatitis. In general, this is a syndrome. It's just inflammation of the liver. Anytime that you have inflammation of the liver, this is hepatitis. A lot of times jaundice will come along with that, as we have, bilirubin being deposited into the skin and all that. Hepatitis A is spread via a fecal oral route, and this is prevented by vaccine. So get vaccinated. Hepatitis B, we also have a vaccine for that. A lot of times people get them in the same series, sort of, but yeah, they're a little bit different from one another as far as the vaccine goes. But yeah, I mean, I got mine around the same time as one another. Hepatitis B is transmitted by blood and sexual contact. It has reverse transcriptase, which we talked about previously in the cardio section. Even though it's a DNA virus, remember, it will be like DNA, make its little messenger RNA to get its proteins going, and then it uses the messenger RNA to make the DNA genome, because it had to be weird and special like that. And that's what it will insert into the host. And then that is why, actually, because it inserts its DNA into the actual host genome after that, just like HIV did, right? That DNA being inserted into the host genome can lead to cancer formation, because it's not always like in like a great spot, or in done in the correct way, or sometimes there's mutations involved in it or whatever that can lead to cancer, liver cancer. Next is hepatitis C. That is going to be shared blood. So that really is talking about like needle usage and drug drug use, intravenous drug use, and sharing needles. There's no vaccine for this, but antivirals have been developed that are pretty successful for this. So it can be cured. It's actually like very successful. Next, last and not least of the gastrointestinal diseases are the helminths. We saved that. Man, the worms. So pinworms, these are the ones that, cause the anal itching. This is Enterobius vermicularis. Tapeworms, this can be transmitted by pork. This is Tinea solium, and they have like these proglottids that are those little segments of the tapeworm that look like little pills that have the eggs inside of them. They are not the eggs themselves, though. Then Ascaris lumbricoides, these are giant intestinal roundworms. These are the most common helminth infection. We've talked about these, like you cough them up and then swallow them, and then that's what begins the cycle again. Yeah, and you can cough up the adult worms and it looks pretty bad. So, yeah, the adult worms are quite large. Then we had the hookworms and the thread worms. They get in through the skin. They cause itching, and you can kind of see them under the skin. They're going to migrate into the GI tract, and then they can also be going into the lungs and then be coughed up and swallowed again. They can actually have their full life cycle in humans or in the soil. Schistosomes, these are the flukes. These guys get in through the skin, but cause liver and spleen enlargement and invade the bladder. They'll coat themselves in blood proteins to hide, so our own blood proteins to hide from our immune system, so they mimic us, and so we don't attack them. But yeah, they have, liver and spleen enlargement just due to the presence of these guys in those areas, and their body's trying to attack them and cause inflammation, and then that can lead to enlargement because of the inflammation. So that's basically how that works. So that's it for the gastrointestinal rundown. And the next one is going to be the last one. I mean, it's so sad. And that last one is going to be the genitourinary, or STIs. Not all STIs, but most of them are.